Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to BrewPod Between the Lines podcast. This is your host, Caden Adsit. My goodness, we've got a lot to cover today. Unfortunately, I haven't really been able to do much of recording with the podcast in the last, really, it's been a week or so since I recorded the last episode. This week I've had finals with school and everything. Just been a pretty busy week with a bunch of moving parts and just kind of wrapping things up. Still got one more final to cap off the semester tomorrow in the morning about 10 a.m. But once that is done, hopefully I'll be able to kind of shift my focus and to more getting into some more interesting topics, taking some deeper dives into like statistics and stuff, and bringing up some more hot takes on Brewers baseball here as we move into the later spring months and even into the summer months. So definitely looking forward to some more continuous, beautiful weather that we've been having recently. There's been a couple of really nice days here this week where I'm at, which has been really awesome to get outside, get on some walks, and just enjoy the outdoors in general. So overall, I should be able to hopefully, like I said, kind of once the semester's over with the craziness of everything that's going on, kind of shift my focus. Obviously, I'll be working full-time, but should be able to spend some more time doing some podcast things and diving into some more in-depth episodes. So I really think that these episodes and these recordings will kind of ramp up here moving into the summer. I think there's going to be some more topics that are really interesting that I'll be able to cover and kind of talk about, maybe some more individual player, ideals or statistics on that stuff. Just kind of talk about some of the things maybe, and just in general as we move through the season. There's definitely more things that we continue to see with some, maybe some different interesting dynamics called by Pat Murphy, or just some interesting dynamics related to the team in general, of what maybe things that I see that I wouldn't mind seeing change or something to that extent. So we'll kind of dive into that here. Pretty much following this episode, my focus should pretty much be able to shift and be done with school and be able to shift and dive into some more important things and just be a little bit more regular here. For the most part, been pretty good to this point so far, but with this gap right now with school and everything, this is pretty much the first time that I've kind of been backed up with doing other things and other activities. So with that, we're going to kind of jump into where we left off from the last episode, which would have been Friday's game against the St. Louis Cardinals. Got a lot to talk about. Going to try to not spend too much time on some of those later games, and I'll spend a little bit more time talking about some of the more relevant games that we've seen here in the last couple days, specifically yesterday, where the Brewers offense just annihilated the Pirates pitching. I mean, completely changed the narrative of facing left-handed pitchers and being poor at doing that. Going into that game yesterday, Brewers had the worst batting average against left-handed pitching, specifically starting left-handed pitching, and the second lowest OPS against starting left-handers so far this season. And really, not that we've seen too many left-handed starters. I think going into this game, there was only probably 3 or 4 different left-handed starters that we've faced so far this year, but just really good bats against left-handed hitters. We saw some of that against the left-handed relievers even on Tuesday's game that we'll talk about. But first, we'll dive into going back to Friday, talking about some of the big key moments in those games, and just kind of give a quick overview and wrap-up of what I saw and what happened in those ones. So yeah, Friday, following that Thursday win against the St. Louis Cardinals, really amazing win overall. Brewers really slugged their way in this one, scored 11 runs on the board, ended up winning this one 11-2. But really, the big thing in this one that I want to touch on, how about the Major League debut from Robert Gazzer? I mean, can you have a much better MLB debut? Coming into a starting rotation for the Milwaukee Brewers right now that's hurting big time. We've got some holes that need to be filled with some of the guys that are on the injured list in DL Hall, Jacob Junis, Wade Miley being out for the remainder of the season. So definitely some big holes to fill in this starting rotation, and he did just that and some, I think. An excellent first start to begin your Major League career. Can't really ask for much more with his parents in attendance there as well. They got a little bit of an interview with the dad and the family there. He goes 6 shutout innings in his major league debut, 2 hits and 4 strikeouts. So, and yes, he did take advantage of facing a Cardinals offense that has been struggling pretty mightily for the most part. But hats off to this guy making his major league debut. He's had a little bit of a struggle in his first few starts in AAA, but that did not translate in this game at all. He was throwing strikes consistently, getting ahead of hitters, and typically not a very high strikeout type pitcher. Definitely a kind of a more pitch to contact guy, at least right now. And I'm sure as he develops his stuff from year to year, with the stuff that he has and kind of the delivery that he has in hiding the ball a little bit, I definitely do think that there's some potential for him to become more of a high strikeout rate type pitcher. But he pitched to his strengths in this one. Like I said, 2 hits, so producing some pretty soft contact through and through. Got those 4 strikeouts. Did a really nice job, like I said, getting ahead of hitters and putting them away early in this one. And really probably could have gone a 7th inning. He had only thrown 81 pitches at the end of 6 innings, so a very efficient pitch count as well. But I think with the lead that the Brewers had in this one, and just the fact that it was his first major league start with some of the stress that I'm sure he had, even though he really didn't show it. He seemed really poised out there on the mound, showed a lot of confidence in his stuff. I think a lot of that probably comes from William Contreras calling a really nice game from behind home plate in this one, kind of calming him down, keeping him collected, and overall just a really good one. But yeah, going back to the offense, Brewers score 11 runs. No home runs in this one, all singles or doubles. I think we had a triple in this one as well. Actually, a couple of triples in this one. So just really good to see the offense be able to string together consecutive hits, consecutive positive at-bats, and just a lot of through and through the lineup, really good hitting. Got 12 hits as a team. We saw RBI hits from Turang. What's new with him? Kind of just the same spot, just continuing to fill that leadoff position in the batting order, and doing a really nice job defensively, like we've seen from last year, and just continuing to have a really stellar season so far. We saw RBIs from Yelich, Adames, Hoskins, Frelick, and Bowers also in this one. So like I said, just through and through the lineup, a lot of different guys doing a lot of good things offensively, stringing together a lot of hits, and ultimately having a really strong game offensively, putting up those 11 runs. And really, congrats to Robert Gazzer also in this one. Gets his first major league win. Much deserving of it. Pitched a great game. Offense backed him up really well in this one. Got some good run support. And overall, just a really nice, pretty stressless game for the most part for the Milwaukee Brewers on Friday. So with that, we'll kind of dive in, move on to Saturday's game. Another really good one in this one for the Milwaukee Brewers. Freddie Peralta gets the start in this one. And really a rare outing for him in this one, in the context that, usually when we see Freddie Peralta get roughed up, which he did end up giving up 3 earned runs in this one once again. But usually when we see these runs given up by Freddie Peralta, it's not due to the hits. It's due to the walks or even getting some hit by pitches. And really, it's typically the self-induced runners that he puts on base that really hurts him in his starts. But this one, and going back to the last couple of years, he's been historically in the last few years one of the pitchers with the lowest batting average against. Just does a really good job of limiting hits. Has given up some of the lowest level of hits for starting pitchers in the last few years as well. But he gives up 8 hits in this one, which across 6 innings, you would say isn't terrible, but that's still, you're still averaging about a hit, 1.2 hits or so per inning, which for him, he's historically had a really good whip, which is the statistic that takes into account for walks and hits per innings pitched. So typically he does a really good job at limiting those base hits. But in this one, some soft contact, finding some holes, and actually some pretty good swings for the St. Louis Cardinals, who have been struggling against pitching in general, especially with Freddie Peralta, the Brewers' ace, out there. But like I said, he really did a good job battling through some adversity. Still collected 8 strikeouts, so had the strikeout ball going in this one. Still got through 6 innings, only gave up 3 earned runs. So overall, really a pretty good game in this one on the pitching mound for Freddie Peralta. Now, the big thing in this game, really exciting. I was watching this one at home. Got a chance to lock in towards the later end of this game. And how about Rhys Hoskins? 7th inning. Brewers, at this point in the game, offensively really struggling with capitalizing with runners in scoring position. Hadn't gotten a hit with runners in scoring position to this point. And boy, did Rhys Hoskins, he saved the only hit for the Brewers offense with runners in scoring position for the perfect moment. Had 2 outs in the bottom of the 7th, a couple runners on for Hoskins, and he takes a slider below the strike zone out to center field for a massive 3-run home run, put the Brewers up at that point 5-3, and after that, never looked back. Got really good bullpen work in this game prior to the Brewers taking the lead from Milner, and then we saw Hudson come in, and McGill with another save on the season. He kind of locked down the 9th inning there, and like I said, another excellent come from behind victory for the Milwaukee Brewers. Definitely fun to see these games where the Brewers come back. And this just continues to cover on that topic where no matter the score or how far down the Brewers are, it seems like we're always just one hit away from taking the lead and completely flipping this game on the other end. And that's exactly what happened here. It was pretty neck and neck all the way through. Brewers squandered a lot of opportunities on the base paths. And until this 7th inning hit from Rhys Hoskins changed the narrative completely and flipped the scoreboard, completely. Like I said, Brewers were down 3-2, losing. You get 1 home run and with runners on scoring position, runners on base, and completely flips the score, makes it 5-3. Brewers go on to win this one. And at that point, Brewers had advanced to 6-0 on the season against the St. Louis Cardinals, which I absolutely love. No offense to any Cardinals fans out there, anybody who may be listening, but I am not a big St. Louis Cardinals fan. I think a lot of teams in the NL Central can say that. And yeah, I do. I totally think that part of it, probably from my standpoint, has to do with the Cardinals have been good for so long. Seems like they're always the team that's battling the Brewers for the Central Division in the recent years. It really seems like no matter what kind of season they've had, they always seem to play pretty well against the Brewers. And then they always seem to kind of make a run at the end of the season and make a run into the playoffs, but which we haven't seen in the last couple seasons, which I'm not personally going to complain about from my standpoint at all. But really good game in this one. Brewers win that one 5-3. And then we move into Sunday, Mother's Day. Happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, anybody who may be listening. And Brewers get to Miles Mikolas in the first inning, really. Pretty good job by the offense in this one, getting to him. They score 3 runs in the first and got his pitch count above 40 pitches. So at this point, you're looking at his pitch count and you're saying, okay, he's only going to be able to go another 2-3 innings. We'll have him out by the 4th inning. But got to tip your hat to him. He did a great job. Ends up finding his stride throughout that rough first inning. And he ends up throwing 6 innings pitched with just those 3 earned runs given up and collects 3 strikeouts along the way for him. So really nice job for him. Brewers were able to get to him really well in that first start of the year in St. Louis as well. Roughed him up pretty good in that outing. But a really nice job for Mikolas. Like I said, he had that really rough first inning. And when you see a starting pitcher go over 40 pitches in an inning, especially the first inning, it definitely raises some red flags. And I'm sure Ollie Marmol for the St. Louis Cardinals at this point was kind of juggling whether or not to start warming up some guys in the bullpen or what was going to have to happen. But Miles Mikolas, veteran pitcher, veteran arm in today's game, does a nice job. And like I said, he really ended up putting together a very solid start after it started out very poorly in that first inning. To be able to go 6 innings pitched after throwing 40-plus pitches in the first inning is pretty incredible. So did a really nice job getting some soft contact, getting some early outs from the Brewers offense later on in this one. We see Bryce Wilson on the bump for the Brewers in this series finale against the Cardinals. And just another struggle game a little bit for him. Saw that a little bit in the last couple ones, specifically with this one stat. He gave up gives up 5 walks once again in this start. So just a big red flag, I think, overall. Definitely don't want to have more than 2 walks, I would say, in a start. I think, it's fair to say that at times you're going to lose command or get in deep battles with some batters, and they're going to win those battles from time to time. But when you're giving up 5 walks, and then the way he was doing it and the fashion that he was doing it, just not very competitive pitches, just wide misses off of the strike zone. And we saw several 4-pitch walks from Bryce Wilson too. So just having trouble with location in this one. Looked like he was really having trouble locating that cutter, which has been such a big pitch for him in the recent times, especially playing off of that sinker that he has, just some different action, a little bit of a different velocity change. So overall, just a little bit of a struggle from that standpoint. But overall, he's been really good, like I said before. He's been really good in the starting rotation for the Milwaukee Brewers. And then we ended up seeing Elvis Peguero. He gets handed his first loss of the season, really after just an insane play. We saw Ciani for the Cardinals hits a ball out to right center field, and I was pretty sure off the bat that this ball was destined for a home run, but takes a really weird bounce off the top of the wall, comes back into play. Brewers end up being able to record an out, throwing him out at third base. But Brendan Donovan was able to come across the plate before that out was recorded to give the Cardinals a 4-3 lead in the 7th inning, and then that ended up being the difference in this one. Brewers end up losing this one, the series finale, 4-3. But like I said, really good series for the Milwaukee Brewers in this game. To be able to take 3 out of 4 games in a 4-game series is not an easy task by any means, especially against the division rival St. Louis Cardinals. And as of right now, this point, already halfway through the amount of games that we're going to play with the Cardinals, but one more victory against the Cardinals, and the Brewers have already won the season series against the Cardinals. So overall, can't complain too much. Really think that this series kind of started to flip the script from some of the tough games that we've seen the Milwaukee Brewers playing and losing overall some of these close matchups. But I really think this was more of Brewers baseball that we saw in this series through and through. And I'm sure if you ask any of the guys and even myself from a spectator standpoint, really probably could have come away with a 4-game sweep on Sunday. But just some things that didn't go our way in this game. Like I said, Miles Michaelis did a really nice job of locking things down, doing a nice job getting through 6 innings. Sometimes going up against one of the better pitchers in today's game when he's right. Can't get too upset. Just some really good things from him. And after winning 3 out of 4, like I said, already a really good series going into this game. And the Brewers did a nice job keeping this game close and keeping it competitive through and through the game. So yeah, that kind of wraps up at least some of the past games that we haven't touched on. Usually, like I said, I would have obviously recorded an episode in between this series and the Pirates series, but just with some of the schooling that was going on, had to go home this past weekend to see some family and actually get in on a little bit of my brother's action from his travel baseball. Had his first tournament of the season, so got to watch some of that, which was exciting. And then just trying to battle. Had a couple finals on Monday, had another final on Tuesday, so been pretty busy. Had a little bit of a gap here yesterday and today to put some content together before my final tomorrow. So getting this episode out here, kind of in that difference of me being busy and battling some different finals. And like I said, after this one, should be able to get back to some more regular recordings and do that. So yeah, okay. So now we're gonna dive in. We're gonna dive into Monday's game, the series beginning against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So second time that we've seen this so far for the Milwaukee Brewers this season, where they play the Cardinals first, and then they bounce right back with no off days to playing the Pittsburgh Pirates. This time completely flipped to being a road series and a road trip to being this 7-game homestand, which is the largest one we've seen so far this season. Ray gets the call in this game for the Milwaukee Brewers and gets handed his first loss of the season. He ends up giving up 3 earned runs and 6 innings of work. Got really roughed up a little bit early in this one, which we've seen for Colin Rea. Continues to be susceptible to that home run ball. Gave up a home run to Jack Sawinski there in the first inning. Surrendered a run in the third inning as well. So definitely one thing of struggle for Colin Rea going back to last season. But for the most part, he's doing a pretty good job with limiting the runners on base. And he hasn't given up that home run with, where you get 2 guys on or giving up a grand slam or something of that matter. Typically, these home runs seem to be of the solo home run variety. In this one, we see a 2-run home run. But for the most part, limiting the damage as to those big home runs that really completely flip the scoreboard one way or the other. And really, so Brewers head into the bottom of the 7th inning in this one, down 5-0. And really, the offense did all they could to battle back in this one. We see 2 runs scored off of an Adames 2 RBI double in the 7th inning. And then Jake Bauers, how about him? He swung a great bat in this game, had just excellent at-bat after excellent at-bat, had a couple of really significant at-bats against Mitch Keller on a couple of rockets hit right to the right fielder Brian Reynolds, which would have easily scored 2 runs. In each of those at-bats had a couple runners on base. And like I said, just rockets off the bat, just of course, going right to the right fielder Brian Reynolds. And you think about that, a couple of those at-bats could have completely flipped this game on its head, putting the Brewers up, tying the game, whatever it may be. But overall, just some really good at-bats in this one for Jake Bauers. And then how about kind of taking some of that frustration out on the ball and making sure that a player is not able to make a play on the ball with hitting the Brewers' first grand slam of the year. He hits that one over right field. So kind of a good thing for him to see. You get some of these frustrations with some of these rockets hit off the bat. So what better way to put the bat on the ball and not let the player make any play on it with sending it over the wall and driving in 4 runs. And at that point, we had a 7-6 ball game. It was pretty close. And then we ended up seeing Elvis Peguero, I'm looking at the wrong stat line here. 1 second. We saw Mitch White for the first time for the Milwaukee Brewers, a guy that's been DFA'd by a couple of different teams here in the last few weeks, actually. He got DFA'd by both the Toronto Blue Jays and Philadelphia Phillies in just the last few weeks, so he's been everywhere, flying, back home to his hometown in San Diego, kind of going back and forth. So it can't be easy for him to come in to these games, pitching with new teams, trying to get familiar with new faces, moving around so much. So gotta tip your hat to him a little bit. But he has a little bit of a rough first outing for the Brewers, gives up a couple of runs in an inning and 2/3 pitched. And then we see really kind of a crazy at-bat to lead off the 9th inning. You really feel like after that 8th inning with the Jake Bauers grand slam that the momentum has shifted in the Brewers' favor. And we see the home plate umpire miss a call on Brian Reynolds, which should have been strike 3. Was kind of Malachi Moore was a little bit all over the zone in this one, making some poor calls. Really went for both sides. Kind of looked like, from my standpoint as a spectator at first, that it was really just kind of going against the Brewers. But after looking at the umpire scorecard, it was pretty even and actually was favored towards the Brewers a little bit, which I was quite surprised about. But definitely, especially in this moment, kind of a pivotal moment, should have been strike 3 called. And then 2 pitches later, Brian Reynolds hits a solo home run, which, just like I said, it seemed to completely switch the momentum in this one. And Yoel Payamps continues to struggle a little bit. He ended up giving up a couple of hits, but only just the 1 earned run surrendered. And overall, Brewers weren't able to come back from that. Ended up losing this one 8-6. But like I said, once again, in one of these losses for the Milwaukee Brewers, seems like we're right here and able to battle back. Had our opportunities in this one and just wasn't able to collect that big hit to tie it or put us over the top and give us the lead. But nonetheless, I think the big thing in this one that I wanted to talk about a little bit, that's definitely frustrating from the Brewers' standpoint, Rhys Hoskins, second inning in his at-bat, he hits a base hit down the right field line. Looked like he was kind of thinking right out of the box to extend it into a double based on where it was hit. Kind of made a wide turn around first base there and felt something grab at him in his right hamstring. He ends up exiting this game with that injury with the right hamstring strain, and really sucks. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's the home run leader on the Milwaukee Brewers right now. He's had several games with just some major pivotal hits late on in the games, especially against that home run, or with that home run against the St. Louis Cardinals on Saturday's game. And it seems like just as he's starting to get in a groove, have some more positive and consistent and positive at-bats overall, it just stinks to see him, one of our power guys, one of our better hitters in the lineup, get taken out. And who knows, with some of these strain injuries, Pat Murphy came out, it looks like they're looking at 2 to 4 weeks right now for him to be on the injured list. Right now, only got placed on the 10-day injured list, which is nice. So it is possible, if he gets some time on the field here in the next few days, for him to return as soon as that is over. But as of right now, definitely stinks to see one of our better hitters. We're just getting Christian Yelich back, and he's not even playing 100%, I don't think, right now. Still kind of getting left out of the lineup every 3 days. I think just trying to keep that back healthy for the most part, which I think is a very smart decision by the training staff and Pat Murphy for the Milwaukee Brewers. I think don't want to push anything too hard right now and have him re-injure that back that we've talked about before. But just stinks to see, just as you get Yelich back, you get one of your better hitters again. He exits the lineup, and it really got me to thinking of what would the Brewers offense and where would we be at right now without William Contreras if he were to be injured and placed on the injured list. I wouldn't be surprised. I think the Brewers might have a losing record. He's been that key of a player, both behind the plate and obviously offensively, being the second league leader right now in batting average and a lot of the major offensive stats in William Contreras. So where would this team be without him putting up, very, very good MVP type numbers right now so far this season? And it just got me thinking, with Rhys Hoskins exiting, it's like, where the heck would our team be right now if William Contreras was injured or even got placed on the injured list for 10 days? I mean, you're talking about 2 weeks-ish worth of games without our star player and our best player by far right now on the team. It's pretty crazy to think about maybe where our team could be at if something like that were to happen. So hopefully he's able to stay healthy, something that I was really thinking about last night. Hopefully he's able to stay healthy and stay in the lineup, as right now, so far to this point in the season, he has played every single game without taking a day off. So kind of going back to the end of last year, we saw him in there on a daily basis in the lineup, and really good to see Gary Sanchez get some time behind the plate to put William Contreras in a DH spot, to at least get him off the field physically. Catching every day puts a big physical toll on some of these players, so to be able to get him out of the catching position was good. And then going back-to-back with that yesterday, and then having him have the day off today as well, the whole team having a day off, so he'll have back-to-back days being out of the catching position. So good to see for him to get a couple days off behind home plate, and I'm sure we'll see him in there again tomorrow against the Houston Astros. But overall, Brewers lose that one game on Monday. Bouncing into Tuesday, really nice bounce-back victory for the Milwaukee Brewers. They win this one 4-3. We see Joe Ross get the ball in this game, looking to bounce back after really a couple of rough outings overall. And in this one, he ends up going 5 innings pitched on 2 earned runs, 2 hits, and including 6 strikeouts. And I think the really big thing in this one for Joe Ross, I think he did a really nice job. Some of the things that we've seen a struggle with earlier in the season was he limited those walks. He did a really nice job, only allowed 1 walk in this game, and that seems to be the point for him so far this season that's really hurt him, giving up some walks, giving up those free bases, and then you get, a hit or 2 after that. You've already got guys basically in scoring position, and that's where some of those earned runs have come to bite him a little bit. But able to collect his second victory of the season. Really good job for him in this one. And Brewers offense did a really nice job as well. Only ended up getting 4 runs in this one. All came in the second inning against Quinn Priester for the Pittsburgh Pirates. But I thought it was a really good job. I think we saw some guys that have been struggling offensively so far this season, and I think they did a really good job kind of picking up the offense in this instance. We saw Sal Frelick. He hits his first home run of the season. He's been pressing at the plate pretty mightily. We've seen his strikeout rate rise quite a bit from last season. Seems like just in general he's having a tough time, at least before this game. It seemed like he was having a tough time picking up the ball. We've seen a lot of strikeouts looking for Sal Frelick, especially on backdoor sliders and cutters and stuff from right-handed pitchers. But we hope to see him improve, kind of getting moved into that 6th or 7th role in the batting lineup. And he did a great job in this one, got that home run, of course, to right field, to his first of the season. And then, of course, we saw him make a couple of outstanding and stellar defensive plays out in center field, and 2 completely different plays, too. He had one play on a line drive hit right in front of him, had to make a forward diving play where he was kind of caught in between letting it drop and diving, and a little bit of deja vu from the Elly De La Cruz hit in Cincinnati, where he ended up missing that ball completely, and Elly De La Cruz comes around for an inside-the-park home run. But a really nice job, made the adjustment pretty much mid-dive in this one to collect this ball, made a splendid play. And then we also saw him go pretty much full-out Superman out in center field later on in the game with Elvis Peguero on the mound in the 8th inning. And who knows what would have happened if this ball gets behind him. You got Andrew McCutchen running. He's certainly going to get a double, if not a triple. And depending on how the ball gets away from Frelick, or, depending on how he lands, from not catching this one, you could be potentially even looking at an inside-the-park home run, which would have made it a 1-run game at this point. So, really good job from Sal Frelick. Pretty much an all-around, full-cycle game for him in this game, and a really good thing to see for him, as he's definitely been on the struggle bus a little bit for this team. Did end up seeing in that second inning a couple of RBI singles also from Bryce Terang, Christian Yelich, just to really cap off that 4-run inning for the Milwaukee Brewers. And then what more to talk about? The bullpen does their job once again. Combined efforts from Brian Hudson, who has been terrific so far this season. We saw a couple scoreless innings out of him. Just did a really nice job in his outing. We saw Elvis Peguero pitch that scoreless and clean 8th inning, and then Trevor McGill finishes off this game with another save for him, and end up giving up 1 run on really just a really nice at-bat from Connor Joe from the Pittsburgh Pirates. With 2 outs, he ends up getting a solo home run after a deep pitch count for Trevor McGill. Had to throw quite a few pitches in this one, specifically in this at-bat to Connor Joe, but just a really nice at-bat. Took a fastball above the zone, and I mean, he hit it out there to left field, no doubter, and then luckily for Trevor McGill, able to come back and strike out Jack Sawinski to end this one and get the Brewers a bounce-back 4-3 victory. All right, and then now we've got one more game to talk about here, just to kind of cap off. And yesterday, I mean, my goodness, it was just an excellent game to watch, really fun game to see, pretty much a home run derby, it seemed like, for the Milwaukee Brewers offense. Had a total of 5 home runs in this game, a season high by far for the Milwaukee Brewers. And really, like I said earlier, completely changed the narrative. We saw Martin Perez, left-handed pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates, going on in this one. And word is against the Milwaukee Brewers that they have not fared well by any means against left-handed pitching, specifically left-handed starters, with having the lowest batting average against right now against left-handed pitchers heading into this game, and the second lowest OPS against left-handed starters behind the Chicago White Sox, who have been just mightily struggling pretty much against all pitching so far this season, heading into this one for the Milwaukee Brewers. But how about completely changing the narrative? And the interesting thing to me is Martin Perez is not one of these guys, not one of the left-handed pitchers that's really been struggling. He came in lacking some run support from the Pittsburgh Pirates with a 1-3 record, but overall had a pretty solid ERA at 3.6 coming into this one. But Brewers offense had no problem after a couple of scoreless innings, and having a couple of opportunities there in those first couple innings. They end up collecting 11 hits on 9 earned runs off of Martin Perez. And like I said, 5 of those hits, all 5 of the home runs in this one for the Brewers coming off of Martin Perez, all started with a 3-run home run on just a beautiful swing from William Contreras. Takes a changeup down and away, waits on it nicely, and hits a high fly ball out to right field. Just makes it past the wall for a 3-run home run. We saw Gary Sanchez hit his sixth home run of the season. He continues really to just rake against left-handed pitching. We see Sal Frelick with another really good game in this one. He tallies 3 hits, and he gets an opposite field home run, and home runs collects homers in back-to-back games for Sal Frelick. We see Joey Ortiz with a really nice game in this one. He goes 2 for 2 with a couple of walks and a hit by pitch. Was not retired at all in this game, hitting in the 3-hole for Pat Murphy and the Milwaukee Brewers. He golfs one out of the stadium into left field for a 525-foot home run. And then the home runs capped off by Jackson Chourio with the farthest home run of the day for the Milwaukee Brewers at 441 feet to left field. And really good to see him have a couple of hits in this one. I really think in the last few games we've seen a large improvement from Jackson Chourio. He's done a really nice job kind of working the plate, working the outer half of the plate, and taking the ball to the opposite field a little bit. We've seen a lesser tally of strikeouts in the recent games, and realistically just having a lot of improved at-bats. And I think this really showed in this one with this big home run for him and his 5th home run of the season. For the first time really since the middle of April, he hasn't hit a home run. So really good to see that for him, and hopefully kind of carry on with breaking out of this slump for him. And of course, not to take away from the excellent offensive game for the Milwaukee Brewers, not to take away from the amazing second outing of the career for Robert Gazzer, following up that excellent Major League debut for Gazzer, dealing in this one. He ends up going 5 innings pitched on 6 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, and a couple of strikeouts. So once again, just kind of a pitcher to contact right now so far with his stuff. Did collect a couple of those strikeouts, but the only thing that was a little bit of a concern in this one for Gazzer was just his ability to put away some of the batters after getting ahead of them. Saw a lot of deep counts in this one, a lot of full counts, really just some good at-bats from the Pirates, kind of working the pitch count for Gazzer, and only able to go 5 innings. But really, another one where I thought he was kind of pulled out of the game an inning early. Ended up having his cleanest inning of the game in the 5th, where he only threw 5 pitches after an error that was recorded by himself. Ended up getting a ground ball double play started by Andrew Monasterio, and then just a 2-pitch fly out to center field from O'Neill Cruz. So just a really good 5th inning, definitely his cleanest. And I really thought he could have gone out there for a 6th inning, but I think with the Brewers having such a big lead already at this point, no reason to press forward and risk some kind of injury or something to that arm. So, and I'm sure with this, this role being in the major league, still kind of work that pitch count a little bit. Don't want him to obviously get injured or cause any harm to that throwing arm whatsoever. So yeah, okay. Well, that was a lot of stuff to cover. Obviously, mainly to do with the fact that I wasn't able to record a podcast in the last episode, but a lot of exciting things. Brewers cap off the best homestand of the season so far for them by far, going 5-2 on this 7-game homestand, and just a lot of really good baseball. This is one of the things I touched on in one of the last episodes, is I really feel like the Brewers, when at that point when I recorded that, hadn't been playing to their A game yet, and I think I still don't think they're playing quite to their full potential yet, but I definitely think we saw some glimpses of that A baseball from the Milwaukee Brewers. I think they had some glimpses of some of their full potential this season with some of the offensive games we had, with some of the pitching performances that we've seen. And the Brewers offense continues to surprise me, especially just from what we expect from them from the last couple seasons. Right now, second in the major leagues, behind, of course, the Los Angeles Dodgers in batting average, and a lot of, like I said, ranking in the top 5 in so many of the major offensive categories still so far in this season. And just a complete swap of what we're used to in the last couple seasons. So really good to see a great homestand for the Milwaukee Brewers. Like I said, by far the best of the season, and we hope to continue playing very well in the coming games and hopefully kind of build a gap between the Brewers and the Cubs as they just continue right now to kind of play toe-to-toe with the Milwaukee Brewers. Right now, Brewers only hold a 1.5 game lead in the NL Central, but for the most part, a lot of the other teams, including the Reds, going through a really rough patch right now so far in their season. The Pirates, the Cardinals, all these teams right now kind of falling off, all sitting below 500 right now. So really, it's just the Brewers and the Cubs at this point in the season that are kind of battling for that top spot. Right now, the Cubs, some people say it doesn't matter to talk about this, but I always stay interested in where everybody is in the wild card race. Cubs right now hold the second place in the wild card by a few games. So just some good things to see. Good to see the Brewers right now have solidified themselves as one of the top dogs in the National League, especially considering all the injuries that they've been dealing with. Like we talked about just recently, getting Christian Yelich back, obviously losing Rhys Hoskins, who's going to be a pivotal loss here in the next week or so, next couple weeks, depending on how long he's out, and then just the starting rotation that's been hurting without Brandon Woodruff, Wade Miley, DL Hall, Jacob Junis, like we've talked about. So really just the whole team battling a lot of injuries. Of course, Devin Williams, the Brewers' closer and an all-star for several seasons. We see him out so far this season. But really, I think Trevor McGill, and we've seen some guys, obviously we've seen pretty much 3 different closers kind of thrown in to the closing role here so far this season. We saw Abner Uribe at the beginning, which he should be back on the team here coming up pretty soon at some point. We saw him definitely struggle a little bit in that closing role. We saw Yoel Payamps, who solidified himself as the closer for a few games, and then we saw him struggle, and now we've kind of moved into Trevor McGill, which I think personally really fits a closer role really well. He's got the high-velocity fastball, got a devastating curveball, and he's really done a nice job this year. We've seen him struggle last year in some of his outings, kind of battling back and forth with injuries. But I think through some of the more consistent outings on the mound, I really think he's one of the better relievers in the Brewers bullpen. Just a really electric guy with some really electric stuff coming out of the right-handed arm. So I think he's kind of solidified as far as right now has solidified his role as the Brewers closer, and I think he's done a really nice job at it so far this season. So hope to see that, as the Brewers, obviously, as everybody knows, is a team that is known for playing in close games. We need closers right now. Brewers have the second most saves in the major leagues. Like I said, combined between, I think it's 5 or 6 different guys so far this season. So really good to see a lot of guys be able to come in those lockdown situations. But we're definitely going to need a guy like Trevor McGill to come in, and a guy that we can really trust to come in, lock down a game in the amount of the close games that the Brewers play. So definitely like to see these games where the Brewers just completely blow out the other team, so we can kind of just throw in some of the other arms, get them some outings as well, but also just kind of save the bullpen as realistically, if you think about it, with yesterday in that blowout victory and then today, you're basically giving the majority of the bullpen back-to-back days off. So really good to see that and have a fresh bullpen going into this road trip that we're going to enter. So with that, just to kind of talk about the road trip a little bit, starting the longest road trip of the season in a 9-game road trip for the Milwaukee Brewers. That'll start tomorrow evening against the Houston Astros, in which we will play 3 against them. Then they will move on and play 3 against the Miami Marlins, who have also been struggling. Both Houston Astros and Miami Marlins, you would expect to see some victories in there. Hopefully you'd like to see them go 4-2, 5-1 in that stretch of games against a couple of teams that have really been struggling so far this season. And then that'll finish that road series up with a 3-game series in Boston against the Red Sox, which they've had a pretty solid season so far this season. So should be some interesting games there against the Red Sox. But of course, would like to see the Brewers continue to collect wins against the teams that they should in the Houston Astros and Miami Marlins. So we'll see what comes of that. Brewers call on Freddie Peralta on the bump in tomorrow's game, and then we'll see Bryce Wilson on Saturday and finishing up with Colin Rea on Sunday. So should be some good games. kind of got our beefy part of the starting rotation coming up for those matchups. So hopefully able to see some good starts and see some good games. Looks like the Brewers are scheduled to match up against Justin Verlander on Saturday. Veteran, definite Hall of Famer in today's Major League game, has had a really good career. So I always like to see the Brewers play against guys like that. Going to be interesting to see the at-bats that we're able to put up against him, and hopefully, eventually collect a win in that game overall. So yeah, that kind of covers really everything I wanted to talk about. Definitely a little bit of a longer episode than I typically like to record, but just with that gap, just a lot of content to cover, a lot of important things to talk about that I wanted to discuss and just go over from past games and just some thoughts on some of the things that I've seen. So with that, BrewPod Between the Lines podcast is always available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and other mainstream podcast sites. So feel free to listen to this podcast from wherever it is you may like in the future. I can always be reached on social media using @brew_pod on Twitter, or by searching BrewPod Between the Lines on Facebook or Instagram. And with that, hopefully you guys have a good wrap-up to the end of this week, whether it is maybe you're battling finals kind of the same way I am, or just finishing up the work week, whatever it is you may be doing. So hopefully that goes good for you guys. And with that, we'll see you next time. Talk to you soon. And of course, go Brewers!